What's up everyone, welcome to Drummer's Perspective. My name is Ben Todd and I'm here to help broaden your scope of what's possible as a drummer. Thank you so much for taking some time to tune in today, whether you're listening on the podcast or you're here with me on YouTube. I really appreciate you wherever you are. If you are here on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, that would really help me out and let you know next time I've got a video coming out. Today, I had the absolute best time chatting with someone who's inspired me and influenced me so much, not only in terms of being a great drummer, but also just having an incredibly diversified, successful career as a musician in Australia, and that's Mr. Darryn Farrugia. Now, for anyone that doesn't know Darryn, he is without a doubt an absolute Australian drumming legend. He's just played with so many different people in so many different musical environments. People like Leo Sayer, B.B. King, Bonnie Raitt, Tommy Emmanuel, Hugh Jackman, Tina Arena. The list just goes on and on and on. He's done so much stuff. He was also the original house drummer on Hey Hey It's Saturday. And recently, Darryn has actually been subbing with one of my favorite Australian bands, the Cat Empire, on a European tour. So Darryn is just such a versatile player. And he's also recently established an incredible educational YouTube platform, which I really highly suggest you go and check out as well. Now in our chat today, I speak with Darryn about how he got to be such a versatile and adaptable drummer and why he thinks it's so important. We also talk about his recent subbing experience for the Cat Empire, how that opportunity came about, and just what it was like on tour. Alongside this, I speak with Darryn about how he established his YouTube presence and profile and what he hopes to achieve by sharing his incredible knowledge and wisdom that he's gained over all his years of being a successful drummer. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Darryn Farrugia. Before we get into today's chat, I want to offer you a free gift just by you being here. And today, it's my 5 tips to improve how you play with backing tracks PDF guide. Now, we all know that playing along with backing tracks can be super fun and enjoyable, but we can also waste so much precious practice time just jamming along and shredding to them. Now, the main issue I hear time and time again with drummers who are playing with backing tracks is this real sense of disconnect between what they're playing and the track itself. It's like they're completely oblivious to all the subtleties and nuances that are going on within the music of the backing track and just in their own little world. Many of the concepts that I discuss in this guide are the exact same concepts that I utilize when I'm asked to record drum tracks for people from my home studio. Here, I'm essentially sent a backing track from an artist or musician, and they're asking me to record drums to their music and send it back to them with the ultimate goal of it sounding like I'm playing drums with the band of musicians that have recorded the track. So if you want to improve your overall musical experience of playing with backing tracks, as well as learn some key concepts and ideas about how to dramatically improve as a drummer by focusing on some specific things when you play with backing tracks, then please head to drummersperspective.com/5track-tips and download that free PDF guide right now. Darryn Farrugia. Man, thank you so much for taking some time today to chat with me. You are without a doubt, someone who I look up to so much in terms of just being not only an amazing drummer, but like how you've been able to, have such a successful, varied, versatile career as a drummer in the Australian music scene. You're someone who it really inspires me and I idolize so much. So man, thank you very much for sitting down and chatting today.
It's an absolute pleasure. You are too kind.
Oh man, no, not at all. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know Darryn out there, like I said, an absolute legend of the Australian drumming music scene. Going through your bio quickly and just pulling out some names of the many that you've played with, Tom Jones, B.B. King, Bonnie Raitt, Tommy Emmanuel, Leo Sayer, Hugh Jackman. Like, it's amazing. And not to mention like all of the session work and TV work you've done in the past. So yeah, go check out Darryn's stuff and your amazing solo projects as well, which is super cool. So yeah, man, it's great. You've got such a wealth of experience and knowledge in so many different avenues of playing, as well as the scene itself. So yeah, man, I feel like we could talk about so many different things, but I want to start by talking about a little thing that I think about a lot when I think of you, and that's when we actually got to play together for a little while with the band called Goose, which unfortunately doesn't play that much anymore. But apart from my dad, you were one of the first drummers that I played with. not like as a drummer, but I was playing percussion in the band and you were playing drums at that time. And for any drummers out there who have had the chance or might have the chance to play in a band with another drummer, I would really highly suggest it, because you learn so much and you hear the drums in a completely different way when you're in the band, but not on the drum chair and not from the audience perspective either. So I just remember like playing with you and thinking, oh man, this is the level of confidence and authority over like time and feel and effortlessness that I want to have as a drummer, and yeah, getting to stand next to you and play percussion and watch you lead a band like that from the drum chair was really, really inspiring, and I still think about those times a lot. So yeah, it was really fun, man, to do that. But yeah,
had I have known back then the monster drummer that you are, I probably wouldn't have felt so confident about playing on stage with you.
Oh man, too kind. No, I mean, those memories, like I said, they have really like helped to shape my journey and my path, and yeah, so yeah, it's great to talk with you in this state now. We're kind of reflecting on that stuff, as well as I've got so many questions I want to ask you, but firstly, I guess, like I said, you are extremely versatile as a player, musically. Looking at what you're doing now, and obviously the stuff, even going back to Hey days where you were playing with different artists and musicians all the time. That versatility, was that always like a focus for you? Like, did you always want to be a versatile drummer, being able to say yes to everything? Or did you kind of start in one lane, like jazz or rock, and then kind of, the diversity came out of necessity?
It's a bit of both. I think ultimately, the influence behind wanting to be a versatile drummer is just the fact that I wanted to work, and I recognized this in my mid-teens, when I was starting to make decisions about wanting to be a full-time drummer. I knew that the more I knew, the more I would work. And at the same time, a lot of I'll say, my biggest influence, still to this day, and as was back in my mid-teens, was Steve Gadd. And, I had a lot of records that he played on. And so he was playing on everything from, the pop music of the day to playing, records by, Chick Corea or Lee Ritenour or whoever. He just seemed to be on everything, and he played quite a lot of styles. And I also liked the way I liked his Latin grooves, and I loved the fact that he had this beautiful snare drum technique. So really that was a big influence, trying to emulate that, trying to, sort of make these categories of musical styles that I felt that I could sort of get into and learn, that would ensure that I would have some kind of, not only a place in the music scene, but also some longevity in the music scene as well. So, and then local drummers, again, I was into David Jones and Virgil Donati, and those guys were doing studio sessions and doing jazz gigs and, whatever. So I think I just accepted that should actually be a part of, being a working drummer.
For sure. That's super interesting, because obviously there are guys out there who are specialists in a certain style or genre or whatever, and they obviously are amazing. But from that working drummer, being able to play as your like primary source of income, so to speak, and that balance has always been an interesting one to me, and people's perspective on that. So yeah, I think for me as well, like I looked at my dad, who was a freelance drummer, and he kind of made his career just playing drums and playing music, which I recognize as well that you just need to be able to say yes to everything if you want to be able to, like, I guess, make money just as a playing player. But nowadays, like, how important do you think it is to like diversify your skill set as a musician, if you want to have a successful career? Like, I mean, in terms of even just like yourself, like being able to record from home, or being able to compose, or being able to arrange, or obviously teach. Like, do you think that's an important thing in today's scene, or?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it just depends on how involved you want to be in a scene. Um, I've done my best to keep up with things. I've done my best to, like my career could well have been over when Hey Hey It's Saturday finished. And I got to say a really funny thing. Hey Hey It's Saturday finished about a month before my first child was about to be born, right? So, and then I knew I had to take gigs because we were down to one income. And my first gig that I did back was my first couple of gigs were with a Maltese wedding band, which is where I got my start as a teenager, I did my first gigs because my family are Maltese. So my first gigs were playing in a Maltese reception band. And to have, 9 years of high profile television work come to an end right before my son was born, and then go back to what I was doing as a 12 and 13-year-old was kind of quite a reality check. I made a point to, like take on more students and all of that sort of stuff. So fast forwarding to, the present day, things are different, like there are no more clinics. We don't do clinics anymore. I used to do a lot of clinics, and, the studio scene doesn't really exist anymore. So, what do I do in order to satisfy those particular urges that don't exist outside of this room? So, that's when I got into doing the YouTube thing. And that's when I set up a studio so I could record tracks for people at home. And, I tried to, as self-absorbed as this may sound, there is a certain amount of relevance that you have to, or that one has to have in a scene. And I know people who, for example, they're not into social media, so they don't have a Facebook account, or they don't have Instagram, or they don't do any of that stuff. But then they're also sort of scratching their heads as to why they're not working as much as they would like. And it's not because you necessarily need those things to work, but there's a certain thing where you need to just be relevant, and you need to allow people to know that you exist somewhere. And if you put up a video of yourself playing at a gig or whatever, people go, oh yeah, that's that guy. And you're just kind of there somewhere. And so that's important to me. That has always been important to me.
Man, there's so much in that's that I find super interesting. Firstly, like, super humbling to hear that story about like you doing the Hey Hey gig and then going back to like the your teenage band days, because I think there's like, I mean, it's probably always existed, but there's a lot of pressure and thought behind, as a musician, as a drummer, as whatever, you're constantly trying to like do the next best thing, and then the next best thing. And you see these guys doing these massive shows, and you just think like, oh man, they're just like living the absolute dream. But the reality is sometimes like someone might be out on tour with a huge name artist, and then they come back to their hometown and they're back doing the bar gigs and the club gigs and the weddings, and that's totally okay. It's totally fine.
It is absolutely totally okay. I mean, as I've gotten older, there's one thing I really love doing is when someone offers me a gig and it's out in the country, where I have to drive maybe a couple of hours and do a gig in a country town. And I really like that. And often I will just say yes to those gigs just so I can get out of the city. And right. I did one a week or so back in Ballarat on a Tuesday night doing this cabaret style gig, which was sold out. And it was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed the experience of just getting out in the country, listening to an audiobook in the car on the way there. So, and there's something that's so much better about that than, being on a stage and, in front of a big audience and dealing with pressure. It's nice to actually not have pressure. I mean, pressure is great because it makes you play a certain way if you've got the confidence to meet it head on. But, there's just times when you want to do something simple.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Man, that's super, super cool. Something else you mentioned just before was about how you, I wanted to ask you about establishing your YouTube presence and how that kind of evolved and what you thought was, you wanted to share and the angle you wanted to take with it. But I think, yeah, there is a bit of a taboo thing, and it's not just like, it's not a certain type of person or generation or whatever, but there are certainly like stigmas behind social media, and a lot of people kind of categorize it into this thing of being like, yeah, vain and kind of, not unnecessary and all that kind of stuff. But I think I really agree with you in a sense of like, if you want to be known now and seen and recognized, like, it is a reality, and it's an important factor in the scene today, just to have some kind of presence. I think whatever it might be, even if it is just like, yeah, throwing a little clip up if you're playing or practicing or doing something, it's just like, reminding people, because otherwise you just like can get lost. If you do want to play and you do want to be out there, like, it is a thing that's really important.
Yeah, well, my start in the YouTube world was really a lot of encouragement from my partner, and she kept saying to me, "You've got to do it. You have so much to offer." And me, I was just reluctant, because the learning curve when it came to learning editing software and learning how to set up cameras and lights and all of that stuff was just a bit too overwhelming for me at the time. And then so I caved in, and I did my first video. And then immediately after I did that video, I got a comment from someone contacted me on Facebook and said that they saw the video, and they've got this Facebook page for drummers, and they've created a challenge where people have to learn the particular thing that I was covering in that video. And I thought, wow, this is cool. I've immediately connected with people. And so that first experience was quite encouraging. And so I sort of kept going from there, and sort of made a commitment to doing a video every week. And then I started, or at least uploading a video every week. And then, I started setting goals for myself by, this particular time I want this amount of subscribers and all of that. And then I set up the store, where people can download PDFs. And I thought about this in the long term, like in terms of creating some passive income in the longer term. As I'm getting older, I'm getting very particular about the kind of work that I want to do. So I'm not going to go out and do everything. So, in the future, I want to be able to just have money being able to come into my bank account without actually having to physically leave the house or lug a set of drums in order to do that. So that's really how that came about. It's funny because there is, like you said, there are stigmas associated with that kind of thing. For me, there are a lot of drummers doing this sort of thing. I'm one of, tens or possibly hundreds of thousands of drummers doing, this kind of YouTube thing. And so a lot of those drummers probably don't play as much as I do. There are guys who only do that. They only just do YouTube, which is great. They have a lot to offer in that sense, but I still consider myself a working drummer. I'm still doing several gigs a week. And so every so often I like to put up a video of a gig, or put up a video of me, not that it happens that often, but whenever I'm in a recording studio doing a session, I will, upload some footage from that as well. And then, the other thing that we need to consider too in this day and age is, I don't know how old you are now, Ben, but back in the 90s, or let's say pre-internet, the only information we got about drummers was, buying Modern Drummer magazine. We couldn't go on YouTube. We had no idea of what was going on essentially outside of the US. And now with the advent of, of YouTube and whatever other social media platforms, I'm now aware of drummers that just exist all over the globe. And that's the difference. When I was doing Hey Hey It's Saturday, that was a very popular television show, but it was really confined to, within Australia and at one point New Zealand for a little while. But that was it. All these years later, I don't have the high profile gig that I used to have in terms of the television gig. But what I do have is an international audience of drummers who follow me, who support me by buying my products, and who comment on my videos. And that's the thing that I'm so overwhelmed by, is just the reach. I even had, like, I get guys commenting from all over the world every week, and it's very humbling. But there was one time where this guy sent me a message to tell me he enjoyed my videos or whatever. He was in the Ukraine, and so I said to him when I responded to his comment, I said, I hope you're doing okay there. And he said, well, we're getting bombed and all of that sort of stuff, but, I still come back to watching videos and playing the drums because it makes me feel good. And I'm thinking, man, like I've just had this interaction with a guy who's in a war zone, his country is getting bombed, and he's taken the time out to comment on a video that I made, and that's what keeps me going in that regard.
Gosh, wow, that's super powerful, man. Amazing. But it's a testament to the quality of what you present as well, because like you say, there are a lot of guys that are doing this, but like certainly not everyone has the experience that you do and is still out there actually playing and being able to share information that you use every day as a drummer, so that's really valuable. And I think something that like resonated with me when I started thinking about setting up this kind of YouTube platform is that although there are so many people out there sharing information and doing this kind of thing, it's just sometimes the way that you present the information. You could be saying the same thing as someone else, as someone's been saying for 10, 20 years, but it's everyone has their own unique voice, and it's the way it's phrased and presented and delivered from your perspective that is going to resonate with someone, even if it is the same. So that's something that I think is important to remember for me, but also like you have like I said, so much to share, which is just like it's super valuable for the drumming community as a whole to have the incredible resource that you offer. So yeah, man, thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Again, thanks for more encouragement and more support.
No, it's great, man. It's great. So yeah, something else I wanted to talk to you about was you subbed on Cat Empire tour recently and some shows for them, right?
Yeah, that was awesome. That was in March. We did a 5-week tour of Europe.
Amazing, man. I think like just when I saw that you were going to do that, I thought, yeah, absolutely, like the perfect guy to come in to that gig, both musically and in terms of like being a sub drummer, because I know how versatile you are and how you can adapt, but also bring your own unique voice to something. But that band for me was like so influential and inspiring when I was in high school. The music, it was like the soundtrack of me and my friends, high school time. So like I often thought about like subbing for them and what that would be like, and oh man, that would be so cool to do this and play this song and be in this festival environment and all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious for you, how did that play out in terms of like your approach to it, and like what the dialogue was like between you and Danny and the band in terms of how you were going to play? Was there much direction in that, or was it just kind of like learn these recordings and then we'll see how it goes?
That's funny. Well, firstly, I should talk about just going back a little bit before that, the way I got the gig, because that was one gig that I never thought I would ever get asked to do. Like it was never in my radar. And in fact, at the point that I was asked, I was not aware that the band had reformed, because the band had officially, did their final tour, and that was the end of the band. So I put a band together of my own, finally, playing in a band, performing all of my own compositions. And the trumpet player in that band is Ross Irwin. And so we did a gig, a first gig. It was great. It was sold out. Everything was fantastic. And about 3 days later, I remember where I was. I was at Newcastle Airport waiting to fly home from a gig. And I get a phone call from Ross Irwin, and me thinking that he was just ringing up to talk about the gig that we'd just done. And so I was having a chat with him and saying, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the gig was great. Thanks a lot for doing it. I'll get paid. So, all of that usual post-gig stuff. And he said, actually, that's not the reason why I'm calling. I'm just calling you up to find out if you would be interested in doing a European tour with the Cat Empire. And I just could not believe it. And And so I said yes straight away, and he said, "No, let me give you the details." I blocked the conversation out beyond that point because I just wanted to do the gig. And then he sent me the details, and also it sounded great. Like I thought this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. I've never done anything like this before. So what happened was that gig wasn't till March of this year. So I got the phone call in August of last year, and what happened was in December, and so I kind of put it out of my mind. I didn't want to get too hyped up about it just in case the thing fell through. And what happened in December was they were recording to do some shows or a show in Tasmania somewhere. And anyway, I got a phone call to say, "Hey, Danny can't make a couple of days of rehearsals. Do you want to come in and rehearse with us? And we'll give you an opportunity to learn the songs." And I thought, yeah, that'd be great. So I had about maybe a couple of weeks notice. And so this is in December. And so I had to learn, I learned, just wrote out, charts for about 15 songs in a day, just spent the whole day doing it. And I said, "Look, I can do this. Just be aware that I'm going to be reading at the rehearsal." And they said, "That's totally fine." And anyway, so, I went into the studio where they were rehearsing maybe on their first day of rehearsal, so I could hear Danny. I asked if I can go in, and I was there for about an hour or so and just heard Danny play the rehearsal and get an idea of how Danny played the show. So that was a big help to me. So then when it came for me to do 2 days of rehearsals with them, I knew the tempos of the songs. I'd listened to they asked me to listen to the original recordings of the songs and not the live versions. So, I did that, and, much to my surprise, they were really happy with how I approached it. They just thought I fit in, like you said earlier, they said what you said, that, I just seemed like the obvious choice to them, but I didn't feel that, I didn't feel like I never thought in a million years I'd get asked to do that gig. So, the dialogue, they're amazing because they said, more than one person in that band said, the idea is, you go in and you play the gig, but, inject your thing into it too, your energy, your vibe and all of that. And, there wasn't any time that I can recall during that tour or during the rehearsals where they were at me about the way I was playing. They just seemed to think that I was a really good fit. So, that was massively encouraging. It was just the most wonderful experience.
That's incredible, man. So cool. Because I heard a few like live clips and things of you playing with the band and how you approached it. And it's just, it was great. It was just like, because it sounded like you, obviously like your style and your vibe and all that kind of thing, but within that context and framework of their music. So it was super cool. But yeah, man, I just found that really that kind of journey is always kind of a little bit interesting, I think, too, when someone is asked to come and sub for a big band like that. And I guess like they're like reestablishing their sound and their personnel a little bit now. So I thought it was interesting too, like having you come in at that early age and whether that's kind of how that's affected even Danny's approach. Maybe like did you offer things that have kind of been added in, or is it still just like Danny's taking it back and he's running with it now?
I would imagine Danny's running with it now. Having said that, with the reformation of the band, up until the point that I finished that tour, I had done more gigs with that band, with that inception of the band, than Danny. So I guess some things had changed while I was doing it. They added sections to songs, or they might say, let's add another 16 bars here, or let's change the groove here, or let's open up this section. So a lot of those things evolved actually on tour. And that was the thing that really knocks me out about this band, is that, we might change the set from night to night. We might add songs, or we might change the order of the songs. They're constantly tweaking things. And then, at the start of every sound check, Ross will have taken notes about things that might have gone astray during the gig. And he might say, oh, when we get to this bit, let's just, focus on tightening up, whatever. Or, it was like this band has take a lot of care and pride in what they do, and the attention to detail, is really good too. So I know every gig was so important to me. I never once became complacent and thought, yeah, this is great, I've got this nailed now. Like, I just wanted to give it 100%. And every gig was different, but there were some nights that were just really special. Like, the show that we did in London was probably my favorite one. In that, I lived in London for a few years and I had friends there, and that was really special to me. I had ex-students there. And then, the show in Paris was great because, it's a big city. I love Paris. And my partner had come over from, Melbourne, and she was traveling, and we met up in Paris for, 24 hours. And, so, there were those things. And when you have those particular moments, you actually put in even more than you would at any other gig. And
Absolutely.
it was great for me. Like, I'm just so grateful for the opportunity.
Cool, man. That's awesome to hear. So great, man. Yeah, again, very inspiring to hear that journey and progression, and that they are like, great guys. Because I mean, I know a lot of those guys already and know that they're like super awesome dudes musically. So I don't expect anything less in that sense. But yeah, it's cool to hear your experience with all that as well. Actually, that kind of leads me into something I also wanted to ask you about, and that was, you spent like quite a bit of time living and working in London, right? Like 5 or 6 years or something like that.
I was there for about 4.5 years.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so just after we were playing in Goose, I left.
Okay, right, made the move. So you just, okay, cool. What I guess, like, there's a lot of guys out there who think about going through the path of music school and university and then the local scene, and then it's like, okay, what now? If they do want to go on to different things, and making that move to a new city, whether it's a London or a New York or an LA or things like that. What was that experience like for you? And then I guess, like, because you lived in Australia, then lived and worked in London, and then have come back to Australia, were there any like particular differences that you found interesting, or do you think one city can learn from the other in like the scene sense?
Yeah, that's interesting. My experience in all of that was interesting because by the time I'd moved to London, I had Melburnian friends and musicians who had moved there and were doing gigs. So I moved there and got gigs straight away. Right. I was working with people who knew me. I was working with people who, who I had worked with here in Melbourne. So I remember when I got my first gig with, working with musicians that I didn't know, that was when I got really nervous, and, any sort of sense of complacency was completely gone by that point. And I had to treat each gig like it was my first. So that was tough, for the first couple of gigs, getting used to that idea. But what I found was amazing was, the amount of times that my name got tossed around. And so I was getting phone calls for gigs all the time. It was really great, and just, it just got better and better, to the point where, I was doing gigs at Ronnie Scott's. I remember there was one particular experience where I was playing in Carl Orr's band, and we had 3 nights at Ronnie Scott's supporting the Yellow Jackets, so we'd do a set, the Yellow Jackets would do a set, we'd do a set, the Yellow Jackets would do a set, then the same thing would happen the following night. So, we're playing to audiences that really appreciate that sort of music. And the band that we were playing in, Carl's band was just great, playing Carl's fusion tunes and all of that sort of stuff. So, that was great. And then I got hounded for a long time to come in as a dep on a West End show called Thriller, which was this Michael Jackson show. And I kept putting it off. But then by my last year in London, the global financial crisis had really kicked in, and I needed work. So I decided to accept the gig. And then, I went into that gig and, I thought, wow, I'm actually playing a West End show, man. I can't believe this. And so I did that as a dep. And then that show, and actually while I was doing that show, during the time that I was doing it as a sub, Michael Jackson had actually died.
Wow.
And Michael Jackson was booked to do 21 shows at the O2 Arena. So, that's well over 1 million people that were going to go and see him. So they all got their money refunded and they came to see Thriller, the show in the West End. So the shows were full and packed and people going nuts. And we'd play a song and people screaming out, I love you, Michael, and all this sort of stuff. It was quite an emotional experience. So because of the popularity of that, they split the show up so that, because there was so many cast and so many musicians that they were actually able to have a touring version of that show as well. So I jumped on the tour and I toured with that for about a month, going to, Eastern Europe. So again, seeing all of these places that I would never have seen had I not been doing that show and had not have been a musician. So, that was great. And then I came back and it was actually, I've got to say, this is going to sound like a shock to a lot of people. I was harder breaking into the Melbourne scene. I thought,
Wow.
I'll just go in there and I sent some emails out to people to try and get a teaching gig and coming home was hard. It was really hard. Took a long time, but, before things, it was easier for me to get gigs in London than it was to get gigs back here. And I thought,
that's
you bastards,
incredible. Yes.
it was awful. And, it'd be 4 years after I'd moved back and people would say, are you still living in London? Are you out here visiting? It was very funny.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm sure. Because you obviously were like extremely established before moving. And then you would kind of think in some ways like coming back, you'd be, as busy, if not more busy, in a short period of time, but not just not for it to take certainly that long. So, wow, that's a really interesting thing to hear. So you moved to London and you already had some contacts there. So
Yeah.
how what advice would you give to someone who was considering moving to a place like London or anywhere really where they don't really know people? Is it best to just go there and get out and see gigs and do that kind of thing, or try and reach out to people before? Or
there's a few ways I guess you could do it. I made a point of having a teaching gig just so that while I'm waiting for the playing gigs to pick up, I had some students or I had a class or whatever to teach. And that was really helpful to me. So prior to moving to London, I was in London maybe a month or 2 months before that. And that's when I went to a school and set up an interview try and get a teaching job. And they offered me a job straight away, fortunately. And so, that helped. So a friend of mine who I worked with here, who's now living in London, she's a great singer and she's, teaching at the school that I taught at. So, that sort of helps. If you don't have that kind of inclination and you just want to get out there and play and, find a band, they have jam sessions there. And, there's a bunch of gigs. So I think, you just have to rely on some networking skills, make friends. I gave my number out to people. Every gig that I did, if I was playing in a 5-piece band, the other 4 members were potential employers of mine. So I always gave them my phone number and, and that was funny because I never had to network, well, not for a long time, not since I was a little kid, not little kid, but, teenager trying to break into the scene. So, I had to rely on those skills of saying, hey, I'm a drummer, I do this and here's my number, let's have a play, or let's, you just got to do that. You just got to become a networker in a polite way. No one in England, certainly no one in Australia likes people who are in your face about it, and, do that sort of stuff. But you can be really polite about it.
Yeah, it's just awesome to hear like you going at that stage, like I said, where you were very established in Melbourne, and then making that move to a different city. Like I think a lot of people wouldn't have the guts to do that, like the drive and the confidence to be like, nah, I'm going to reestablish myself in a new place. That's really inspiring to hear, just in terms of like a career lifespan. You know, it's not like you have to be, you know, if you want to move, you need to move before, you know, you're 21 or something like that. Like you can kind of, you know, if you want to do it, you can do it at any point. It just, you know, some things are harder, some things are easier because you're older and more experienced. But, you know, getting back into that, you know, mindset, like you say, of, you know, networking again, it can be challenging. So yeah, great to hear that, man.
Yeah, well, I was 38 when I decided to do it.
Yeah, wow.
So,
Wow.
you know, I was no spring chicken, let's say.
Yeah, no, but that's cool, man. That's super cool because, like I said, there's, I think that common path that sometimes people feel the pressure of is like, I got to figure it out, and do I want to move or not? And, you know, but like, you know, you're living proof that you can kind of do it whenever you like. It's just, you know, the coming back thing was interesting to hear as well.
Well, that's the thing I did not expect. I expected it to be harder there and not hard here.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. Okay, well, man, this has been so cool. I want to maybe wrap it up with just talking a little bit about, well, hearing your thoughts on you know, the versatility thing and how much different work you're doing at the moment. You know, for some younger guys out there, or even guys that are like established in the scene, what do you think are the really important things or elements of playing or you know, music business or whatever it might be that are important today, like in today's scene? What are the things that you think it will make you as a drummer or as a musician successful?
You know, it maybe took me a few years to sort of attain enough maturity to be able to say, put the music first, you know, like put your own ego aside and put the music first. And, you know, all I want from my career is to just keep playing the drums, you know, because a few years ago, I wanted to actually, you know, give it away and get out of the music business. So
Wow.
I had a bit of a, you know, I don't know, something shifted. And, you know, I just know that if you do all of those things that are important for the music, you know, for us drummers, you know, playing with great time, which is, you know, the thing that I struggle with the most, you know, playing the right fills, playing, you know, playing at the right tempo, just taking care of those things that, you know, I consider part of our job, you know, just all of those things. And then from the other side, you know, just being easy to get along with, having fun with people, you know, all of those things, you're setting yourself up for not only a career, but, you know, a long career. You know, that's what I try to tell, you know, my students, that, you know, just try and find whatever it is about that song that's challenging you. You know, like, even if you've got to go boom, but boom, for, you know, for a 4-minute song, if that's boring to you, then you're completely missing the point.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I did a video on this, actually, a YouTube video, where if you're playing a simple song that's, you know, made up of an intro, a verse, a pre-chorus, a chorus, a verse, a pre-chorus, a chorus, a solo, an out, you know, there's each of those. Even if you've got to play 1 and 3 on the bass drum and 2 and 4 on the snare drum, there are subtle changes that you can make on the hi-hat that will delineate each section of that song. And so that's that having that mindset helps you go from being bored by the experience to being a little bit more involved and listening. And, you know, and that's what I like. I like sort of finding the challenge in that. You know, and let's say, you know, when I was doing the Cat Empire tour, I mean, all of those songs were challenging to me because, you know, you'll be playing some kind of soca rhythm, and then in the next section we'll go to a songo, and then it'll go to a funky thing, you know. So my challenge was not only being able to nail all those individual grooves, but then making sure that when I transition from one to the other, you know, those transitions are smooth and all of that stuff. So, you know, that's just my attitude of, you know, putting the music ahead of everything. It's not, you know, I can't wait to get to this bar because, you know, that's when I get to play my flashy fill. And so, you know, all the time leading up to the flashy fill is just, you know, you're just time wasting because you want to get to this point where you can go ballistic. You know what I mean?
Time wasting. That's a good use of words too. Time wasting.
So yeah, that's my advice to people. It's just put the music first. If you love what you do and you want to do it for a long time, if you put the music first, it will guarantee that. I mean, Steve Gadd's 78.
Wow.
And he's as busy now as he has always been. Like, he's probably not doing as many studio things, but he's been on the road with James Taylor for ages. And when he's not doing that, he's doing other things. And that's what I want. That's the career. That's the career that I want.
That's so true, man. And when you kind of take a step back and look at these guys who are successful, and you see them play and you watch them play, you can tell that they're in it. That they are just so invested in what they're playing and what they're doing, because you can also tell the guys that aren't. Like, if you see a musician who's not genuine and not like, and they're not playing from the heart, and they're just like either going through the motions or thinking about something else, then that comes across to the audience. So it's no surprise that the guys who are still playing later in their lives and are at a super high level are the ones who are the most invested. So
well, that sort of that leads me to other things that part of our job, and I can guarantee what I'm talking about here, Ben, but sometimes you might be playing a song that you hate or that bores the pants off you, but you have to make it sound like you love it. That, and that's the important thing. Sometimes we have to fake it so that we're not coming across as, man, this drummer, I can tell this drummer is really boring. I want to be, regardless of whether I like a song or not, I'd like to be seen as someone who's looks like, man, this guy's really getting into it. He's really enjoying it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's important.
Oh man, it's so important, and it kind of brings up that discussion as well of like, at some point when you're on a gig and maybe you don't love it so much, and it's not your most favorite type of music or people or whatever, like it is our job, like, not that we're selling out to for a paycheck or whatever, but we are using our skills to do a job and give the audience hopefully a certain feeling or emotion, and we're kind of part of that, even if we're not personally like emotionally all in love with it, but yeah, that's an interesting topic too.
well Carl Law said something to me once, and I remember we were actually in the band room at Ronnie Scott's, and he said that when you're doing a gig, like we're about to do at Ronnie Scott's, there are a lot of people in this room that have just had a shitty week, a hard week at work, and all they want is just to spend some money that they've earned to go out, have a drink, and listen to some music. So, if you keep that in the back of your mind, do have an obligation. There are people paying to kind of forget about some crappy experiences they may have. They may have had a bad day, or they may have found out that they've lost their job. Oh, it could be any number of things. And they're looking to us like we would look to going to see a movie for a bit of escapism. They're looking to us for a bit of escapism, for 2 hours or an hour and a half of escapism from what it is that they've had to deal with that day. That's important. Man. That's important to me.
That's so important. And like, again, looking at your career and how successful you've been, like you're living proof, and you're doing it every day, where you're like I said, playing at such a high level and delivering. Anything I hear you play is good, which I think like that doesn't come, that's certainly not the case for everyone, but every time I hear a recording or something you've posted or whatever, it's like, yeah, it's always the highest quality, and yeah, like I said in the beginning, super inspiring, and I'm so happy we got to talk today and chat about some of this stuff, and we could talk for hours, I'm sure, with the different topics and things like that, but yeah, man, this has been so fun. So I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me today, and all the people that are going to hear this hopefully and get something out of it as well. So man, yeah, thank you again. I hope we can catch up.
Thank you so much for asking me, mate.
Of course, man, of course. We'll catch up again soon.
That'd be great.
Okay. See you, mate.
See ya.